Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right, everybody. Thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books, and I'll let you know what I thought about them. But before we get into that, I gotta give a big station to all of you beautiful people out there watching and subscribing and supporting this channel, these videos. We really do appreciate it. We just recently surpassed 10,000 subscribers. It's a dream come true, and we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you so much, PCP Army. You are worth it. Now let's get into the weekly comic book review, and we always start with the pick of the week. This week's pick of the week is Decorum number 7. Well, it's been a minute since we've had an issue of Decorum. So that means it's been a minute since I've been able to pick Decorum as the pick of the week. It's become rather predictable, but I love this book. I think that it goes well far beyond in innovation, experimentation, and moving forward what you can do with a comic book page, merging up all these different art styles, but making it feel like one cohesive vision and unit. That's Mike Huddleston doing an amazing job with the artwork. Yet again, beautiful, luscious, gorgeous pages that are well painted and just absolutely freaking masterful. And then you've got other pages that are a little bit more stripped down, a little bit more very obvious with their color choice and trying to affect a mood or a tone or something like that. And Jonathan Hickman's just giving us idea after idea after idea. Oh my goodness, this is one of the most Hickman-y books you'll read, and I am just loving each and every single issue of it. Decorum number 7, this is the penultimate issue. And I remember at some point a lot of people, including myself, thinking, well, I trust Hickman, but how is this all going to tie together in just a couple more issues? And they masterfully do that in issue number 7. All these different events, all these different parts of the story, these different characters and organizations, some things that have been developed in and of themselves, but how do they truly connect? How does this story come together as a cohesive unit and make it make complete sense from issue number 1? They do it right here in the pages of Decorum number 7, setting up an extravagant finale, I am sure. Decorum number 7 blew me away once again. The level of innovation, the experimentation, the impact of the story, and just how masterfully it is structured. This is complex, and it is dense, and at the same time, it can be enjoyed in a very loose way, in a very free way, because there's a lot there on the surface, but there's so much more underneath it. Let's keep the image train going. Let's talk about Shadecraft number 1. This is a new one. It's from the exact same creative team as Skyward. Now, I really did like Skyward. Thought it had an okay ending, but I liked Skyward. So this is written by Joe Henderson with artwork by Lee Garbett. The artwork's pretty solid. I really like the artwork. The story is okay. It feels like, so the basic premise is about this woman who can control her shadow, but there's a twist to it, and she's also attacked by shadow entities, right? And she's just a normal person. And the way the story gets introduced is rather fast. It's got a very quick pace to it, and I appreciate the quick pace throughout most of this book, and that was something that I loved about the energy of Skyward. However, I think it doesn't really help the book anchor in and set up its base concept by anchoring that character. It seems more like the concept is so easily understood without us really getting into the character. Now, by the end of the issue, we understand the character and all that stuff. I thought it had some missteps in its pace in the beginning of the issue, but then it kind of ironed out, and I am kind of excited to see what's going to happen, but it didn't quite hit me concept-wise or execution-wise like Skyward number 1 did. But Shadecraft number 1 is out from Image. Also, we got Department of Truth issue number 7. This is another, what do they call it? It's not a sidestep. They call it let me get to the page, a deviation. That's right, a deviation. So just like in the previous issue, this is focusing on a little bit of backstory for the Department of Truth, and in particular for a character. It was Lee Harvey Oswald in the last one, and this one it's kind of like, I guess his assistant or something, but a really cool story that's set in the past of the Department of Truth that's illuminating some elements of the story, of this organization, of these people that are involved in this organization. Just like the last issue, this has a different artist. This is Tyler Boss. I really like it. It is not the style that we're used to seeing Mart Simmons on this page. However, this works so freaking well for this story, and what it is it's the recounting of this dude's story about the Men in Black. And I don't know how much research James Tynion has put into this book, but the idea that the Men in Black may not be government agents, I really, really dig that. And I thought that this was a rather haunting and chilling issue, and it had a really great structure as well. And I thought that Tyler Boss's artwork really fit. I like these two issues doing deviations. I don't know if we're getting more deviations or if we're getting back to Martin Simmons. It seems like he'll be doing the main thrust of the story, but I like doing this kind of stuff. It makes it feel like 90s old school Vertigo, how they would switch artists in between arcs and this and that, and then bring back a familiar artist, and really cool stuff. But Department of Truth continues to really astound me, and I really loved issue number 7. Then we got Crossover, issue number 5, Crossover, from Donny Cates, Jeff Shaw, D. Cuniff, and John J. Hill. So if you were wondering who is that superhero that dude had tied up, well, they're going to let you know right here. So we weren't really supposed to know who he is, but what it turns out to be is pretty impactful. This book is really ramping up its action, ramping up the stakes. Madman, the paybacks, it's so much fun. They're introducing other ideas or different concepts on these ideas that have already been introduced. But I'm really liking Crossover. It's Donny Cates, Jeff Shaw, basically giving a love letter to comic books, though it does seem like mostly their own comics, but that's okay. That's neat and nifty. It's got Madman in it, and that just blows me away. It's Madman. Crossover number 5 is the penultimate issue of the first arc. It will go beyond, but it takes some turns that I really think kicks up the action. Speaking of Donny Cates and Image, we got Redneck number 30. This is the end of Tall Tales, which is the penultimate arc. So we got one more arc of Redneck, and this is a setup that is going to make the ending of Redneck so explosive and bloody, and I cannot wait. This has low-key become one of my favorite vampire comics I've ever read. When I first started reading it, I dug it, but I didn't really ever think that it would hit the scope that it's at right now, and I'm just in for it. I think this book is fantastic. If you like vampire fiction, Donny Cates does a great job of building out the world, of always kind of turning things on its head. And in this issue, like if you've been reading along, you get another gut punch issue that is setting up for a hellified finale. Seriously. Lissandro Estrin, Cuniff on the coloring, on the artwork and the coloring. I really, really like the style. It's got a grit. It's got an edge to it. There's some really intense moments in here. The tension just builds, and then it explodes, and y'all, we ain't ready for the finale of Redneck. I'll tell you that. And finishing up our look at Image this week, we got Spawn 316. And Spawn 316 says, it's awesome. I am loving Spawn. I got the dope Capullo cover with Plague Spawn, so this is continuing the fight of Spawn and Medieval Spawn against the giant Omega Spawn, and now we got the Plague Spawn thrown in. Yeah, there's spawns everywhere. They're all over the place. It's like Oprah woke up one morning, it was like a spawn for everybody, right? Why not? Because I'm having so much fun with it. Spawn is not the best comic book on shelves, but it's definitely one of the most deserving of being picked up. It's still only $2.99. It still has a really great, fun 90s type punch, and it never lets me down. And ever since I became a Spawn fan, which is a little over a year ago, after years and years of just holding out, my life has improved. So I'm just saying, if you don't read Spawn, maybe you should. And I'm just going to say this Plague Spawn dude, already know that when that action figure comes out, I'm getting it. Let's jump over to Marvel. Beta Ray Bill is here. Beta Ray Bill #1, first part of a new miniseries that is written and illustrated by Daniel Warren Johnson. That's why we really care. We care because it's Beta Ray Bill. And Beta Ray Bill is just a badass character that, let's be honest, recently, not a lot of respect has been thrown on him. He shows up in books, and he does cool moments and things, but he's kind of kept getting his ass kicked the last few appearances. That's just, he's always like a second-rate Thor, though he's got a very intense fan base. And I feel like Daniel Warren Johnson is a fan. This was awesome. So it's got a King in Black tie-in type thing. I'm really shocked and surprised they didn't use the King in the Black, but I think they knew that Daniel Warren Johnson has a baked-in fan base, and so does Beta Ray Bill, that they don't need the King in Black tie-in, that maybe that would actually lead people away from this at this point, in the King in Black event, because I'm loving King in Black, but not the tie-ins. But Beta Ray Bill was awesome. So if you like Daniel Warren Johnson's work, you're going to love this, because it's explosive. It's got a lot of energy to it. There's some fights. There's lots of cool stuff. Great artwork. It's got a grit. It's got an edge to it. It's also got this complexity. It's got this detail to it. And the action just absolutely frickin' sings. And yeah, that's Fin Fang Foom with a symbiote on him. Come on. Come on. Can it get much better than that? Yes, because this issue actually gets into the character of Bill. It gets into the character of what he's going through. And it focuses on it in a very well done way that's not too over the top, but just the right amount of comic book soap opera. And it really sings. I absolutely loved this book. One of the strongest debuts for Marvel in a while. Beta Ray Bill, #1, Daniel Warren Johnson. You know it. We got a new Silk book, so this is the first part of a 5-issue miniseries, Silk. This book was all right. It's written by Maureen Go, Takeshi Miyazawa on the art. I like the art. The art's nice. It's clean. It seems cool. I'm not the hugest fan of all the different Spider characters. I think Cindy Moon's an interesting enough character. This felt decent. It felt cool. It felt connected to the legacy of Spider-Man. It's got J. Jonah Jameson in there, so I enjoyed the book. It's not something, I may read it's just a 5-issue series, so I may keep up with it because I can, but it's nothing that's going to blow you away. It's nothing that's doing anything new or different or unique. It doesn't even really do anything as far as establishing Silk as a really awesome character that deserves our attention. Now, I think there's a lot of potential to this character, so I'm interested to see it develop, but it's always kind of floundered just a little bit to me. But this is a promising first part. It's all right, but it didn't do anything super deep to really hook me. Avengers Curse of the Man-Thing. This is a one-shot comic book that is leading into a series of one-shots that are going to kind of tell this whole Curse of the Man-Thing story. The next one's a Spider-Man one. But this one's an Avengers one. I'll be honest. This is one of my favorite Avengers comics in the last several months. I rather enjoyed this. It's Steve Orlando who's making his, I think this might be his Marvel debut. I'm not quite sure on that. The artwork is really freaking good by Francisco Mobili, but we got Guru Effects on the artwork. Really cool. So we get this new character, Harrower. So that's in there, but the coloring, the way it's kind of shaded, and it's got this nice, etherealness to it. Really, really cool. Man-Thing's always kind of been like a poor man's Swamp Thing, but they're doing something interesting with it here. It's got ties to the horticulture, which we've seen in Hickman's X-Men and, that whole Krakoan universe. But the Avengers themselves, it reads as a nice, fun, Avengers story, and it digs into the Man-Thing, and it does the connection to Captain America and the Weapon Plus program. And that's cool, but it's got some big moments, and maybe there could be a redefinition of Man-Thing and his place and of importance in the Marvel Universe when this is all said and done, or maybe it's just a throwaway story. But with the level of detail that was put on the writing, on the story, and the characters, the setup, and the artwork, I don't know. I actually liked it. I thought it was pretty solid, to be honest with you. It wasn't super great, but it wasn't bad or anything like that. I enjoyed the experience. We got a King in Black one-shot for Ghost Rider. See, I don't like the King in Black tie-ins. As a King in Black tie-in, this is weak as hell. So they're fighting a symbiote dragon. That's basically the tie-in. Aside from that, this is Ed Brisson getting to kind of quickly wrap up all of his ideas for Ghost Rider. He was doing that Ghost Rider story where Johnny was the king of hell and Danny was becoming the Death Rider and all that kind of stuff, and it got just cut real quick, right? So this is his coda. This is him in one issue getting to kind of wrap everything back up and set up the toys for whatever they want to do with these characters in the future. So if you were reading that Ed Brisson Ghost Rider run, read this, because this is more of an ending to that, albeit a very rushed and quick ending. And there's even a moment where Ed Brisson, through the characters, is saying, it's not the ending we wanted, it's not what we wanted to do, it's not as big, but it's, it's what we got. At least it's an ending. So, if you're a fan of that Ghost Rider book, read that. But as far as the King of Black tie-in, X-Men number 19. This issue blew me away. It goes back to Hickman being very Hickman-y. We got timelines. We got lots of information being to us. So this is about when Laura and Darwin and Sync went into the vault. Now, in the last issue, the first part of this story, we saw them enter the vault, fight the children, and some craziness happens. Now, this is what I thought we were going to get in the last issue. This is what I was expecting. This is awesome. This is telling their entire story. There are so many high concept ideas that are just thrown out and just amazing, brilliant stuff. Things that is tying things together from earlier on in the Hickman era and things that are really setting things up for the future. I loved it. This is what I love about Hickman. Ideas, off-the-wall concepts, great characterizations, a great story, an interesting way of telling the story. The artwork's pretty solid throughout. So X-Men number 19, I freaking loved it. So if you were super hyped to see the X-Men go into the vault, and then that last issue were like, yeah, that was all right. Well, wait till you get to here. Really good. Speaking of X-Men, we got X-Men Legends number 2. This finally reveals the secret of Adam X and even gives us the full-on Summers Gray timeline, like family tree. So that's helpful. That's a helpful reference. But this is written by Fabian Nicieza with artwork by Brett Booth. It feels very 90s. So if the Krakoan era is not for you and you're really reminiscent about the 90s, have no fear. Nicieza and Booth, they got you. This book is directly referencing stuff from the 90s, talking about the mystery of Adam X Extreme, who was allegedly supposed to be the third Summers brother. They clarify all that here. It makes sense. It's cool, and I liked it. I thought it was cool. Nice throwback. Next issues, they'll be throwing back to the Simonson run over on X Factor. Let's jump over to DC, where we have Flash 768. This is the debut of the new direction for the Flash, post-Death Metal, post-Future State. Was it any good? I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty solid. So it's got artwork by several different artists, including Brandon Peterson, Marco Santucci, and David LaFuenta. And Jeremy Adams is the new writer. I really like the artwork. It's pretty solid. It's now dealing with the ideas. So at the end of Death Metal, Barry Allen decides that he's going to go and explore this newly discovered Omniverse with President Superman and the Hall of Heroes and all that kind of stuff, right? So he's going to leave the Flash legacy back into the hands of Wally West. So now it's Wally West's attempt to kind of redeem himself. But then this writer kind of immediately kind of flips that on its head, and Wally's like, no, I want to quit. But then there's something else that happens. I don't want to really spoil it, but I did actually really like this issue. It had a nice spotlight on Wally, a nice spotlight on Barry, all at the same time. What is this building up to? Who is going to be the Flash? What will be the ongoing direction once this all sinks and settles? Who knows? But this was a really cool story with really cool artwork. Now, it is $4.99, but let me tell you something. This is one of the best $4.99 DC books that they've released, because they've been releasing these $4.99 books that are 20 pages of a Batman story, 8 pages of a Robin story. I guess that's nifty and neat. Or 22 and 8, right? Or 20 pages of a Bendis Justice League story and 10 pages of a Ron V Justice League Dark. Okay, maybe $5 for that. This is $5 of 38 pages of nothing but this Flash story. I was reading it and I was like, man, this feels like it's been going on for a while, but it doesn't feel overly verbose. It's got an energy. It's got a nice flow to it, right? And it's kind of crisscrossing through the past and the future, and it's doing some interesting stuff and directly referencing the Omniverse and the mystery of what's going on. So I actually really liked it. But then I did count the pages twice. It's 38 story pages, not including ads. 38 story pages of The Flash. All one story for $4.99. I'd buy that for, I guess, $5, but luckily, hopefully, you get a good discount at your shop. We got the last Future State book for now, because it does continue and some small miniseries coming in the here and there. But this is the conclusion of Superman vs. Imperious Lex. It was the only DC Future State 3-issue miniseries, written by Mark Russell with artwork by Steve Pugh. This has dealt with the idea of Lex Luthor going off and finding his own planet called Lexor. It's a reference to the Silver Age. I got to give Sleepy Reader 666 major shouts out for pointing that out to me. So it does have a nice, fun Silver Age kind of vibe to it, too. But just like what Mark Russell does, it's got this satirical little punch to it, and I love it. I think it's witty, I think it's clever, I think it's funny, and I think it's a fun book. I really liked the conclusion. Mark Russell's making some points, but he's not being preachy about it. He's having fun with the characters and with the story. Lex Luthor, who rules this planet, but he's like a tyrant. He's a dictator, and he's like saying that like he's the Superman's the one that's oppressing him and shit like that. It's pretty funny. I really liked it, and I really liked the conclusion. Thought it was pretty solid. Not much from DC this week. It is a Fifth Wednesday, so we got those Fifth Wednesday blues, but it's not quite the same like it used to be. They spread these things out, man. I remember back in the day, if you walked into a comic shop on a Fifth Wednesday, they'd be like, "There ain't no comics this week." You'd be like, "Oh man," it was the worst feeling. Like a whole week missing, and then the Diamond shutdown happened last year, and Batman Catwoman number 4 is here though. I'm really liking this book, but in issue 4, it starts feeling like we got 3 different stories going on. All right, we got a past story, kind of a present story, and a future story. You can view it that way, right? They're all 3 interesting. They all 3 tie in together. Tom King is through the structure is working very well with it. Clayman's artwork's pretty solid as well, though it does start feeling a bit more loose. Maybe a little less refined in issue number 4. But I still liked it. But at this point, 4 issues in, there's so much going on in these 3 different stories, I'm starting to have trouble following it, keeping it all together. Now that's probably more of my fault as a reader, having read so much in between here and there, and not staying like, maybe I should reread 1, 2, and 3, and then see how 4 feels. So maybe it would iron it out. I do still like this book. I'm very intrigued by it, but it does feel like Tom King's pace on it could be either faster or slower. I don't know, but it's just starting to get a bit muddy to me in my head of what is going on in all 3 different things. That being said, Phantasm is freaking awesome. Strange Adventures is here with issue number 9, another DC Black Label book written by Tom King. This one with artwork by Mitch Gerrits and Doc Shaner. Now, 2 completely different art styles, but it works so well together on these pages. We are really hitting a level on this story now. We are revealing what has happened, why everybody thinks Adam Strange might be a war criminal. Is he a war criminal? Is he a war hero? What's the fine line between them? The artwork is fantastic. We get stuff from the past, we get stuff from the present day, and it just goes back and forth. Different art styles, different time periods, and it just is such a fluid book, thematically resonant all the way through. There is a thread that is just led all the way through. So even through the art changes, the scenery changes, the character changes, it all still holds true. And seriously, Tom King and company are doing a hell of a job with Strange Adventures. We only have 3 issues left after this. Very excited for that. I'm trying to show more artwork tonight for some reason. So let's show some awesome artwork from that Batman Catwoman. Look at that. Look at that. Then we also got the other history of the DC Universe out with issue number 3. I haven't read 2 yet, so I definitely didn't read issue 3, but I enjoyed the first issue. But it's got really cool artwork, but it's got prose in it, but it's really cool. It's basically telling the history of the DC Universe through like disenfranchised voices, and I think that's pretty solid. We got a new one from Vault this week. It's called Witchblood. Witchblood number 1 is out. This is by Matthew Ehrman and Lisa Sturley, right? Yes. I really like this book. It's got a really nice, fun art style, great coloring too. The colorist is Gab Contreras. I really like the coloring. It really pops. It's got a nice sense of energy. I'll just read you the solicitation. A modern Wild West road trip about a witch named Yana cruising the Southwest as a band of bloodthirsty biker vampires, the Hounds of Love, hunt her scattered coven for the source of all magic, Witchblood. I really like this. It's got a like nice, zany, weird, rambunctious kind of pace and approach to it, but I found it to be rather charming and endearing. At first, it was a little off-putting, maybe a little concerning at first, but I just kind of unclenched and let myself go in and really enjoyed the ride. This vampire biker gang called the Hounds of Love, it's insane when they're like riding into town on their bikes. They got all these like smoke bombs that are going off to hide the sun. Really cool stuff, great stuff visually, and just a fun, rambunctious story. If you like whimsical, that's the wrong word. If you like mischievous, it's just fun. If you like fun, not taking itself too seriously, but at the same time not being overly goofy, Witchblood number 1 is definitely worth checking out. We finally got the 3rd issue of Giga, and I could not be more excited to share this book with you because issue 3 is where this book really starts cementing its heart. Like, seriously, I thought issue number 1 and 2 were great setups, some great world building. Alex Pactadell's doing such a great job with here. John Lee's artwork, amazing. Then we got Roche on the coloring and Aditya Bidikar on the lettering. Fantastic creative team, doing fantastic work. And it's issue 3 where the heart gets cemented in this book, like the weight of the story. This was so well done. Now that we've taken this delicate and deliberate time to build up these characters, to build up this world. And it's a world in which these giant, mecha robots came down. They're considered gods by most of the population. They were fighting this war. The war stopped, and they just rested. And now humanity lives in them, and they've created this whole religion and society around them. But then there are people that refuse that. They want to live in nature, and they're called dusters and this and that. So it's about the society, it's about the class war, it's about the society stuff, it's about the human element of the main character, and he's dealing with loss and regret and shame, and there's a really powerful moment in here about a man of faith losing his faith, questioning God. And a lot of people that grew up in the church have had those kind of moments, and I thought that moment was handled so well here, and it felt so real. This book was freaking fantastic. Giga number 3 was seriously the best issue of that series yet. Holy crap. Shadow Service number 6. This kicks off the second arc of Shadow Service. Pretty fun. It's basically 007 meets Supernatural in a way. Not the show Supernatural, but the Supernatural. You know what I'm saying? So it's a spy action thriller, but it's got this supernatural tinge, magical powers, demons, monsters, stuff like that. The book is pretty fun. It's got really solid artwork. Corin Howe. Kevin Scott is the writer, but the artwork is great. The action is great. The coloring is fantastic. It is expertly paced. We're getting back into the history of some of these characters, really making the story anchored in. It's got some great moments. I love it. Shadow Service number 6, kicking off the second arc. And I think there's a trade out, if not now, soon, right? Speaking of horror in comics, though, Sea of Sorrows number 4. This may be one of the most horrific comic books I have read in a long time. This book was genuinely fucking scary. This book was crazy wild. So, Sea of Sorrows is about this ship, and they're trying to find the sunken U-boat where there's supposed to be this treasure of Nazi gold, right? But there's actually like these really monstrous sirens and shit under the water, okay? And so it's starting to drive certain people mad, and the people on the ship are kind of feuding with each other, and it's all just like this pot of tension that's about to just bubble up and burst. And in this issue, what has been so perfectly built up into, this issue explodes it all out. Holy freaking crap. There was a moment in here, there's a page turn in here where I just lost my shit. I was just like, yeah! Like, if this was a horror movie, and me and Dylan and Jay Strick were watching it and talking about it, we would all be like, bruh, that scene was awesome. And you'll know what I'm talking about when you read this issue. This gets very intense. Gory, violent, bloody, brutal, tragic, and just absolutely freaking amazing. Sea of Sorrows, number 4. Pure horror magnificence. Speaking of horror magnificence, I Breathed a Body number 3 from Aftershock. Zach Thompson, Andy McDonald, Triana Farrell, Hassan Altman El Howe. Whoa. So when I got to read this one early, I got to read the first 2 issues. So I've been waiting for this one. Like, what are they going to do in issue number 3? And they take it further. So this is about a social media influencer who kills himself on video, like on a live stream. And the company ran by his father, who's kind of, the whole purpose of this company is centered around this dude's personality, like his influence, right? And when that happens, they like kind of freak out. They're like, what do we do? Well, they like do some heinous stuff in the last issue where it's like body horror, like torture porn almost, like whatever, not torture porn, but like they're like autopsying his body, like live streaming it, and like just getting like, it's weird, and they're like, it's so crazy. But there's this like element of fungal horror that's in the background that starts coming to the centerfold, to the forefront, I should say, here in issue number 3. A lot of stuff becomes clear, but that clarity brings us more questions. It's like, what if Clive Barker did in Social Network? So you're dealing with these truly horrific things, and they're really exploring that and what it means to want to see this kind of stuff. Like, what does it mean when I'm watching these movies and I want to see someone's face get ripped off. What does that mean about me and my obsession? And what, am I being manipulated by the media and by the markets? Like, is that something? Because that's also something that gets talked about in the pages of I Breathe the Body. It's absolutely great. A spiritual successor to Lonely Receiver, another horror comic that was about our relationship with each other, to ourselves, and to technology. This is kind of doing the same way, but it's really getting gnarly and gross and awesome. Seriously, I Breathe the Body number 3 blew me away. Nuclear Family number 2 is here. This is from Stephanie Phillips and Tony Chastain. Really liked issue number 2. I did read issue number 1. I don't think we covered it in a weekly comic book review because I think that was one of those weeks when Diamond was like really messing up shipments. But issue number 1 was a cool setup. You got this like 1950s family, and then all of a sudden they get this bomb raid, and then a nuke drops, and then they wake up and like everything's desolate around them and apocalyptic except for their house, which is perfectly standing. And then these dudes in gas masks show up and accuse them of being communist spies. So in issue number 2, that mystery gets developed and unraveled just a little bit. It really is interesting. I think there's some really crazy cool concepts that are about to be revealed in this book, but I really liked issue number 2. Number 1 was a good setup. It felt kind of typical and average, and then it had a really good setup at the end, and the way that they fulfill that promise of that setup is very well done in issue number 2. Stephanie Phillips is a very fantastic writer. Her dialogue just eases across the page. The pacing is there, and Chastain's artwork is solid. I really like the artwork in here too. So digging up the mystery, talking about it, building it up, great dialogue, decent characterizations, but just a nice, fun reading experience. That was really cool. From Boom Studios, we have Power Rangers Unlimited, number 1, Heir to Darkness. So this is going to be a series of oversized $7.99 one-shots. I think Frank Gogel's doing the next one. We'll talk about him in a second. L.L. McKinney is doing this one. Simone Ragazzoni, Igor Monti. The artwork is really cool. The artwork's really cool. And what this is the origin of, what's her name? Astromia? I don't know. I didn't really watch Power Rangers in Space. So it's like the villain from Power Rangers in Space. Yeah, Astromia. Something like that. But it's got really nice artwork. It was a cool story. It's her origin story, and it is going to lead into what's coming up in issues of Power Rangers. So you definitely, if you're reading the Power Ranger books, might want to check this out. If you're a Power Rangers in Space fan, you really want to check it out. If you're a Dan Mora fan, you want to check it out because of that dope cover. But even though I haven't really watched a lot of Power Rangers in Space, I was intrigued, and I was enthralled, and I was captivated. So I thought it was pretty solid, and I'm really looking forward to, I think they're doing the Phantom Ranger for the Frank Gogol one, I think. I don't know. Source Point Press, Cult of Dracula, number 1. Got my first Shannon Muir cover. That's freaking cool. Definitely picked this book up because of this Shannon Muir cover and the fact it's got Dracula in the title. I always get excited when there's a book about Dracula. Usually I'm disappointed. I was disappointed in this one too. Love the cover. Don't really like the book. I thought the artwork was, I don't know, it just didn't really do much for me. It kind of felt thrown together. I appreciate what they were trying to do, but overall the story was rather confusing to me. So they're using characters from Bram Stoker's Dracula, like they have those characters' names, and there's somewhat like modernized versions of them, but the story is completely like not, I don't understand the story, and it's not really comparable to the story in Dracula. And I found myself just rather confused, and the art didn't entice me, and so I know a lot of people are probably going to get this because of this cover, but I think you're going to be disappointed if you read it. But that cover is dope, right? That's my first Shannon Muir cover. It ain't going to be my last. Dead End Kids, The Suburban Job is here with issue number 3, the penultimate issue of this series. This is written by Frank Gogol, and this is awesome. This was really freaking good. Great dialogue, great characters. It's about these 3 kids. It's kind of set in the early 2000s, post 9/11. They have found a bag of money. One of their, not associates, but someone they know who's like a drug dealer or whatever, he works for the man who's lost the money, or he's responsible to try to hunt down who did it. So you get this kind of conflict going on. But this is a really great issue because the emotion is there, the dialogue and the pace of the story and the artwork. The artwork is so clean, so freaking clean. And I love the concept of this issue because it's kind of like a reverse heist. They're trying to plan a heist to take the money back. But it was a great setup for what's to come in the final issue. I'm loving it. It's a story that is rooted by characters that have gone through different tragedies, but it brings them together in some way, even though they themselves don't quite realize it. And that backstory is given to us not in an exposition-y kind of way, but in a way through actions in a very delicate manner, and very well done. Dead End Kids, The Suburban Job, number 3. Super solid. From AWA, we have Man's World, issue number 3. The penultimate issue continues getting crazy. It's about these dudes kind of in a futuristic world, and they go off on vacation on this other planet, and where they get to go and hunt game or something like that. They wind up crashing, and then the people that are on this planet don't really like town, they don't really like the tourists, I should say, and it starts going pretty bad. And it goes worse in issue number 3. I'm liking this book. The artwork's a bit stagnant at times. The story's not really delivering anything unique or new, but I've been for the most part, pretty solidly entertained by Man's World and most AWA books, including Bite Sized. This is Bite Sized issue number 4. This is the final issue, but I hope it comes back because this was a very fun, enriching and charming story by way of something like E.T. or even a little bit of Gremlins thrown in there. But it's about these robots from space that show up in this family's house around Christmas time. And this is the big explosive issue where the chaos erupts at the house with all these robots, and then it's got a nice, real fun, tight ending. But I've really enjoyed this book. It's a really fun concept. It's nothing that's going to change your life. It's nothing that you should take super seriously, but as for what it is, for what it's trying to do, it's doing it great. It's like a family movie, and it reads that way, and the art is that way, and just everything about it really works. So there you go. And finally, let's talk about Young Hellboy. His name's Young Hellboy. Issue number 2 of The Hidden Land. Issue number 2 was all right. This story it doesn't quite have the atmosphere of your typical Hellboy story. This one feels a little bit more pulpy, but I think that's obviously intentional. So it doesn't quite have that Mignola panel composition and design. Those are the Hellboy stories that I like the most, but it is always fun to see an untold chapter from the pages of Hellboy. So that's always cool. Plus, you do have some dino action in here, and that is a rather nice cover. So that's what I read. That's what I thought about it. What are you reading? What are you digging? Let us know in the comments down below. I got to give a mad station out to some of our Patreon supporters. That's right. You can join us over at patreon.com/PCP and support the show just like Josh Brewington, just like Brandon Conkle, and just like KC. And KC, you went overboard in our 10K celebration, so thank you so much. The 10K giveaway will be announced very, very soon, everybody, so pay attention for that. Watch this space. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for helping us reach 10K. Now we're moving on and beyond to bigger and better things, and we're all in it together. So thank you guys so much. We really do appreciate it. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Click the notification bell and join us over at popculturephilosophers.com for podcast blogs and a whole lot more. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Keep on reading.